March 24th, 1945, 11:47 a.m., 28,000 feet above Berlin. Captain Nathaniel Blackwood's fuel gauge reads 58 minutes remaining. Distance to target, 47 nautical miles. Distance home, 743 miles. The math doesn't work. It never did. But 24 B-17 Flying Fortresses, 240 men, are counting on the red tails painted on his P-51D Mustang to bring them home alive. The question everyone will ask later is simple. How did a group of men branded as inferior become the most requested, most revered, and most effective bomber escorts in the entire 15th Air Force? The answer begins 20 years earlier, in a document designed to bury them before they could fly. In 1925, the United States Army War College published a report that was meant to be the final word on the subject. It was a cold, academic document filled with pseudoscience dressed up as research, and its conclusion was absolute. The Negro, it stated, possessed inferior mentality, weak character, fundamentally subservient. The report declared that black men lacked the intelligence for technical jobs, the courage for combat, and the leadership for command. It was, in their minds, a settled fact, a biological certainty. This document became the official justification for a segregated military, a wall of prejudice built on the foundation of a lie, stamped with the authority of generals and filed away in the archives of power. For 16 years, that report gathered dust and shaped policy. But lies, no matter how official, eventually meet the truth. 1936. Fort Benning, Georgia. Nathaniel Blackwood was 12 years old when he saw his father humiliated. Brigadier General Marcus Blackwood, the first black general in the United States Army, stood at attention in his dress uniform. 3 silver stars on his shoulder, ribbons from the Great War across his chest. A white captain, 20 years younger, walked past without saluting. The boy watched his father's jaw tighten, watched him stand perfectly still, eyes forward, as 3 more junior officers passed. None acknowledged him. That night, young Nathaniel asked the question that had been burning in his chest all day. "Father, why didn't you say something?" General Blackwood removed his uniform jacket slowly, folding it with the precision of a man who had learned to control every visible emotion. "Because, son, they want me to react. They want anger. They want proof that we don't belong." He hung the jacket in the closet. "So instead, I give them excellence, perfect posture, perfect discipline, perfect performance. I make them choke on their own prejudice." Nathaniel never forgot that lesson. 4 years later, in 1940, he walked through the gates of the United States Military Academy at West Point, 18 years old, 5 feet 11 inches, 168 pounds, the son of a general, carrying the weight of an entire race on his shoulders. The silent treatment began on day 1. It was not official policy, it was tradition, an unspoken rule passed down through generations of white cadets. Do not speak to the Negro cadet except when duty absolutely requires it. For 4 years, 1,460 days, Nathaniel Blackwood ate alone, studied alone, walked through the halls while conversations stopped at his approach and resumed after he passed. No one wished him good morning. No one asked him to study sessions. No one invited him to anything. When required to speak to him for military drills, they addressed him by rank and last name only, their voices flat and cold. "Cadet Blackwood, present your rifle for inspection." Nothing more. He endured. He excelled. He graduated 4th in his class of 421 cadets. At the ceremony, his father shook his hand. "You survived what they designed to break you. Now comes the harder part." What's that? Proving it wasn't luck. By late 1940, war was coming. Everyone knew it. The question wasn't if America would fight, but when. And civil rights leaders were hammering the Roosevelt administration with an undeniable hypocrisy. How can America claim to champion democracy abroad while denying it to 13 million of its own citizens at home? The pressure worked, barely. In January 1941, the War Department announced the formation of the 99th Pursuit Squadron, an all-black flying unit. They didn't call it progress, they called it an experiment. That word is crucial. An experiment implies uncertainty, a test, something that might fail, something you expect to fail. They sent the cadets to a segregated, hastily constructed airfield in Tuskegee, Alabama, a place chosen specifically because it was far from major cities, far from scrutiny, easy to shut down quietly when the inevitable failure came. The base commander was Colonel William Parsons, a white officer from Virginia, with a reputation for brutal discipline and impossibly high standards. The washout rate at other pilot training programs hovered around 40%. At Tuskegee, it hit 60%. While white cadets in other programs needed 200 hours of flight time to earn their wings, the men at Tuskegee were required to log 300. The physical training was harder, the academic standards higher, the tolerance for error non-existent. Every mistake was magnified, every success footnoted with qualifications, and the cadets knew exactly what was happening. They weren't just training to be pilots, they were training to be undeniable. Lieutenant Nathaniel Blackwood arrived at Tuskegee in March 1941, assigned as a flight instructor, despite having never flown combat. He was 21 years old. The first class of cadets looked at him with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Some saw the son of a general. Others saw someone who had survived West Point's silent gauntlet. A few just saw another officer who might wash them out. Blackwood's first speech to them was short. "Gentlemen, you are not here to become good pilots. Good will not be sufficient. You are here to become perfect. Because the moment any one of you fails, they will use it as proof that all of us should fail. This is not fair. This is not just. But this is the reality we face." He paused, looking at each face. "So we will be better than fair. We will be flawless." In that first class were 4 men who would define the next 4 years of Blackwood's life. Ezekiel Rutledge, 23 years old, from Detroit. Everyone called him Zeke, quick temper, quicker reflexes. He had tried to enlist 3 times before Tuskegee opened, rejected each time. Now he flew like a man with something to prove and a chip on his shoulder the size of Michigan. Thaddeus Brennan, 24, Philadelphia, former high school mathematics teacher, quiet, analytical. While other cadets relied on instinct, Brennan calculated angles, speeds, fuel consumption, turn radiuses. He flew like an equation, precise and unforgiving. Roscoe Whitfield, 22, the youngest, from Birmingham, Alabama. He smiled more than anyone else at Tuskegee, which seemed impossible given the circumstances. But Roscoe had decided early that bitterness was a weight he refused to carry. He flew with joy, and somehow that made him better. Elijah Donovan, 26, the oldest, from a wealthy black family in Detroit. His father owned 3 businesses. His mother was a college graduate. Elijah could have avoided all of this, could have stayed home, managed the family enterprises, lived comfortably. Instead, he volunteered. When asked why, he said, "Because if I don't, my son will have to." These 4, plus Blackwood, would fly together for the next 4 years. But first, they had to survive Tuskegee. Week 1. Zeke Rutledge failed his first 3 aircraft control evaluations. His hands were too aggressive on the stick, overcorrecting, fighting the plane instead of flying it. After the 3rd failure, he slammed his flight log on the table. "This is impossible. They built this to wash us out." Blackwood didn't look up from the paperwork. "You're right. They did. So stop giving them what they want." "What do you mean?" "You're flying angry. Anger makes you sloppy. They're counting on that. Prove them wrong." Zeke passed the 4th evaluation. Week 8. During a training flight, Roscoe Whitfield's Stearman biplane hit turbulence at 3,000 feet. The impact threw him against the cockpit frame. Something in his left hand cracked, a small bone in his wrist. He didn't report it. Instead, he wrapped it himself, tight, using cloth torn from an undershirt. Flew his next 12 training sessions with a broken bone. Landed perfectly, every time, never flinching when he gripped the throttle. No one knew until 6 weeks later, when the flight surgeon noticed him favoring the hand during a routine exam. "Son, this healed wrong. You should have reported this immediately." "Couldn't, sir." Why not? Because if I did, I'd be grounded. And if I'm grounded, they'd say I'm not tough enough. And if one of us isn't tough enough, they'll say none of us are. The surgeon stared at him for a long moment. You understand you'll never regain full mobility in that hand? Yes, sir, but I can still fly. Week 15. Thaddeus Brennan developed what he called the buddy system. Every evening after flight training, he gathered the cadets in groups of 4. They would quiz each other on aircraft specifications, emergency procedures, navigation calculations. When someone struggled, Brennan wouldn't just give them the answer. He'd break it down, step by step, until they understood not just what to do, but why. Cadets who had been on the edge of washing out started passing. The collective knowledge of the group rose. One night, Colonel Parsons walked past the barracks and heard them inside, voices reciting fuel consumption rates and stall speeds. He listened for 5 minutes, then walked away without comment. The next morning, he increased the difficulty of the written exams by 15%. Week 20. Elijah Donovan wrote a letter home to his wife. My dearest Sarah, I don't know if I'm doing this for America or just to prove them wrong. Some days I think the answer is both. Some days I think the answer is neither. Yesterday, a white officer from another unit visited the base. He watched us fly for an hour, then told Colonel Parsons that this was a waste of fuel and government money, that we'd never see combat, that this whole thing would be quietly shut down by Christmas.
I saw Parsons's face when he said it, and I realized something. Parsons is pushing us this hard because he knows what we're up against. He knows that good won't be good enough, that excellence might barely be sufficient. I'm not sure if that makes him an ally or just someone who understands the game. But Sarah, I'm tired. We all are. Not physically, though God knows the training is brutal, but tired of carrying this weight. Tired of knowing that every morning we wake up and our performance determines not just our own future, but the future of everyone who looks like us. Is this what freedom feels like? Proving we deserve what should already be ours? I miss you. I miss our son. Tell him his father is learning to fly. And tell him that one day, when this is all over, he won't have to prove anything to anyone. That's what I'm fighting for. Not just a country, but a future where he can just be. With all my love, Elijah. Sarah Donovan kept that letter in a locked box for 60 years. It was published after his death in 2003.
In December 1942, one day before the scheduled graduation of the first full class of Tuskegee pilots, Colonel Parsons called Lieutenant Blackwood into his office. Blackwood entered, stood at attention. Parsons didn't tell him to sit. Lieutenant, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to say is not official. It will never appear in any report, but you need to hear it. Blackwood remained silent. I grew up in Virginia. My father owned a tobacco farm. He believed what that 1925 report said, believed it completely, and I never questioned it, not until I came here. Parsons stood, walked to the window overlooking the flight line. I've been in the Army for 23 years. I've trained hundreds of pilots, white pilots, good men, brave men, but I have never, and I mean never, seen a group push themselves the way your men do. The discipline, the precision, the sheer refusal to fail. He turned to face Blackwood.
I've been making this program harder than any other in the country. Not because I want you to fail, but because I know what's waiting out there. I know that the moment you get to a combat unit, there will be officers like Colonel Meyer, men who will find every excuse, every minor mistake, every human error, and use it as proof that this whole thing was a mistake. So I'm not training you to be good pilots, Lieutenant. I'm training you to be so goddamn good that even the bastards who hate you can't deny it. Blackwood held his gaze. Permission to speak, sir? Granted. Are we there yet? Parsons smiled. It was the first time Blackwood had ever seen him smile. Tomorrow, you'll find out. The graduation ceremony was held on December 18th, 1942. 87 men had started the program, 33 graduated. A washout rate of 62%.
Thaddeus Brennan finished first in the class, Ezekiel Rutledge second, Roscoe Whitfield third, Elijah Donovan seventh. Lieutenant Nathaniel Blackwood was promoted to captain and assigned as commander of the 99th Pursuit Squadron. He was 22 years old. In the audience, General Marcus Blackwood watched his son receive his silver captain's bars. He did not smile, did not cheer, simply nodded once, a gesture Nathaniel caught from across the field. That nod meant, "You've proven you can survive training. Now prove you can survive war." April 1943, Tunisia, North Africa. The 99th Pursuit Squadron shipped out with 43 pilots, 33 P-40 Warhawk fighters, and a ground crew of 127 men, mechanics, armourers, radio operators, all of them black, all of them knowing they were being watched. They were attached to the 33rd Fighter Group, commanded by Colonel Richard Mayer. Mayer was a veteran of the North African campaign, 38 years old, DSC recipient, 1,200 combat hours. He made his opinion of the 99th clear within the first hour. "Gentlemen, I want to be direct. I did not request your squadron. I do not believe this experiment will succeed, but you are under my command, and I will use you as I see fit. You'll fly coastal patrol, reconnaissance, escort duties for transport aircraft. You will not, I repeat, will not, be assigned frontline fighter sweeps until I am satisfied you can handle basic operations. Dismissed." Captain Blackwood stood. "Sir, with respect, my pilots are trained and ready for combat operations." Mayer didn't even look at him. "Captain, I've been flying combat missions since before most of your men knew which end of a plane was the front. When I decide you're ready, I'll tell you. Until then, you'll fly what I assign." Dismissed. The P-40 Warhawks they were given were C models, 1941 production, worn cylinders, oil leaks, maximum speed of 340 miles per hour on a good day, 60 miles per hour slower than the newer D and E models flown by white squadrons. The specifications painted a grim picture. Engine, Allison V1710-39, 1,150 horsepower at 2,600 RPM. Armament, 6.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, 1,800 rounds total. Maximum speed, 362 miles per hour at 15,000 feet. Theoretical, these aircraft managed 340. Service ceiling, 29,000 feet. Range, 730 miles. Weight, 8,720 pounds loaded. The Allison V1710 engines had logged over 400 hours each. Recommended overhaul was at 300. Thaddeus Brennan inspected his assigned aircraft and ran the numbers. "This engine is running on borrowed time, oil pressure's inconsistent, manifold pressure drops at high RPM. If I push it past 2,400 RPM for more than 5 minutes, there's a 40% chance of failure." Zeke kicked the tire of his P-40. "They gave us garbage and expect us to fail." Blackwood walked the flight line, inspecting each aircraft. 27 needed immediate maintenance. 11 had gun synchronization issues. 4 had cracked canopies. The ground crew worked 18-hour days to make them airworthy. For 6 weeks, the 99th flew exactly what Mayer assigned, coastal patrol. Back and forth along the Mediterranean. 8-hour flights, no contact with enemy aircraft, milk runs. Every mission report, no enemy contact, no action. Mayer filed these reports up the chain of command with a cover note, 99th PS, performing adequately in limited roles, not recommended for combat operations at this time. Morale began to crack. Roscoe, always the optimist, stopped smiling as much. Elijah wrote home, "We came here to fight. Instead, we're flying in circles while white squadrons rack up kills 50 miles inland. They're setting us up to look useless." Zeke's temper, barely controlled during training, started surfacing again. He got into an argument with a crew chief over proper engine maintenance, had to be pulled away by Blackwood. That night, Blackwood called his 4 core pilots into his tent. "I know what you're feeling. I'm feeling it too. But this is part of the test.
Maya is waiting for one of us to screw up, to lose discipline, to give him proof that we don't belong. So we wait. We fly every boring patrol perfectly. We maintain our aircraft flawlessly. We stay sharp. Because the opportunity will come, and when it does, we have to be ready. How do you know it'll come? Zeke asked. Because the war doesn't care about Maya's prejudice. Eventually, the Germans will force his hand. Thaddeus looked up from the map he'd been studying. Captain's right. The Luftwaffe has been increasing activity over Sicily. They're hitting Allied shipping harder every week. Maya's already short on fighters. He'll have to use us eventually. It's just mathematics. How long? Roscoe asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. It was 9 days. July 2nd, 1943. 1400 hours. The mission was supposed to be routine. Escort 12 B-25 Mitchell bombers on a raid against a Luftwaffe airfield in Sicily. The 99th was assigned because every other fighter squadron in the 33rd Group was either in maintenance or committed to other operations. Maya had no choice. 16 P-40s from the 99th took off at 13:30. Captain Blackwood led the formation. Zeke flew on his right wing, Thaddeus on his left, Roscoe and Elijah in the second element. The bombers hit their target at 14:18. Explosions rippled across the German airfield, aircraft burning on the ground. Then the radio crackled. "Bandits! 2 o'clock high! Focke-Wulf 190s!" Zeke saw them first. 2 fighters diving out of the sun at 400 miles per hour, angling toward the bombers. The German Focke-Wulf 190A4S were formidable. Engine, BMW801D2 radial, 1,700 horsepower. Armament, 2 20mm MG151 cannons, 2 13mm MG131 machine guns. Maximum speed, 408 miles per hour at 20,000 feet. Superior to the P-40 in every measurable category. For 6 weeks, they'd been waiting for this moment. Zeke didn't ask permission, didn't wait for orders. He broke formation, yanked his P-40 into a hard left turn, pulled 4 Gs, vision tunneling at the edges. The Allison engine screamed at 2,700 RPM, 300 above recommended max. The Focke-Wulf 190 was faster, better armed, flown by a Luftwaffe pilot with probably 2 years of combat experience. But Zeke had something the German didn't expect: desperation refined into precision. He remembered Thaddeus Brennan's lectures about turn radius. The FW190 was fast but heavy. Its turn rate at high speed was 15 degrees per second. The P-40, lighter, could manage 18. Zeke forced the German into a turning fight. The FW pilot tried to disengage, rolling right, diving to pick up speed. But Zeke anticipated it, cut inside the turn, closed the distance. 800 yards, 600, 601. The P-40's 6.50 caliber machine guns held 1,800 rounds total, 300 per gun. Each gun fired 800 rounds per minute. At 200 yards, Zeke squeezed the trigger. The guns roared. Spent casings ejected from the wings. Tracer rounds, every 5th bullet, streaked through the air in bright orange lines. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. 120 rounds fired, 78 connected. The Focke-Wulf's left wing disintegrated. The aircraft snap-rolled, out of control, spiraling toward the Mediterranean, 8,000 feet below. The pilot didn't bail out. Zeke pulled up, breathing hard, adrenaline flooding his system. His radio. "Splash 1! Splash 1!" It was the first kill ever recorded by a Tuskegee-trained pilot in combat. But there wasn't time to celebrate. The second FW190 was still diving on the bombers. Thaddeus Brennan took it. He didn't dogfight, he calculated. The German was committed to his attack run, focused on the B-25's, tunnel vision, a mistake. Thaddeus positioned himself 400 yards behind and slightly above. He led the target, aiming not where the aircraft was, but where it would be in 2 seconds. 1 burst, 94 rounds. The FW190's engine erupted in black smoke. The canopy blew off. The pilot bailed out at 3,000 feet,
parachute deploying as the fighter corkscrewed into the sea. 2 Focke-Wulf 19s, 2 kills, 4 minutes. The bombers completed their run and turned for home. Not one had been touched. When the 99th landed back at base, the ground crew was waiting. The mechanics, armourers, refuelers, 127 black men who had endured the same doubt, the same contempt, the same weight of proving themselves. They knew what had happened before the pilots even climbed out of their cockpits. Radio chatter travels fast. When Zeke Rutledge's boots hit the tarmac, the men lifted him onto their shoulders. No orders, no ceremony, just spontaneous, uncontrollable joy. They had waited so long to celebrate something real. That afternoon, one of the armourers painted a small black swastika on the side of Zeke's P-40 Warhawk, just below the cockpit. 1 kill. It was the first of 112 that would eventually be credited to the Tuskegee Airmen. The first crack in the wall. But one victory wasn't enough to silence the doubters. Colonel Meyer filed his report that evening. It was 3 pages long. The actual combat action was mentioned in 2 sentences. The rest was criticism. While the 99th PS successfully engaged enemy aircraft on July 2nd, the overall performance revealed concerning deficiencies. The squadron demonstrated a lack of aggressiveness in pursuing additional targets. Radio discipline was poor. Formation integrity broke down during engagement. I maintain my assessment that this unit requires significantly more training before being trusted with frontline operations. The report went up the chain, to General Edwin House, to General Carl Spaatz, to General Henry Hap Arnold, commander of the entire Army Air Forces. Arnold read Meyer's report, underlined several passages, wrote in the margin, "Recommend 99th PS be withdrawn from combat operations and reassigned to coastal patrol duties permanently. Experiment appears to confirm initial assessments." The order was drafted. It sat on Arnold's desk, waiting for his signature. 1 signature. That's all it would take to end the experiment. To prove the 1925 report correct. To close the door that had barely opened. In Tuskegee, more cadets were training, hoping to join the 99th in combat. They didn't know how close the whole program was to being shut down. Captain Nathaniel Blackwood received a coded message from Colonel Parsons on July 8th. Meyer's report went up. Not good. Arnold considering shutdown. You need something big, something undeniable, and you need it soon. Blackwood called his pilots together that night. "Gentlemen, I'm going to be direct. Meyer is trying to get us pulled from combat. His report says we're not aggressive enough, not disciplined enough, not good enough. And right now, there are generals in Washington who want to believe him. We have maybe 2 weeks before they make a decision. So when we fly perfectly. No mistakes, no excuses. Understood?" They understood. But what they didn't know, what none of them could know, was that the war itself was about to force the issue. 130 miles south, Allied forces were preparing for one of the most desperate operations of the entire Mediterranean campaign, Operation Shingle, the landing at Anzio. And when that beachhead turned into a killing ground, when the Luftwaffe threw everything it had at the trapped Allied soldiers, the question of whether the 99th Pursuit Squadron was ready would become irrelevant. Because, ready or not, every available fighter would be scrambled. January 27th, 1944. 0400 hours. The radio crackled to life. "All fighters scramble. Anzio beachhead under massive attack. 40-plus bandits inbound. Repeat, all fighters scramble." Captain Nathaniel Blackwood was already awake. He'd been awake since 3 o'clock, unable to sleep, a feeling in his gut that something was coming. Now it was here. He ran to the flight line. His pilots were already there. Zeke, Thaddeus, Roscoe, Elijah, 11 others. 15 P-40 Warhawks against 40 German fighters. The math was impossible, but impossible had never stopped them before. Blackwood climbed into his cockpit, started the engine. The Allison V-1710 coughed once, twice, then caught, roaring to life. He looked left, looked right. His men were ready. On the radio, 99th Pursuit, you are cleared for immediate takeoff. Godspeed. They lifted into the dark sky, climbing toward a battle that would either save the experiment or bury it forever. And as the coast of Italy appeared on the horizon, painted orange by the rising sun, Nathaniel Blackwood whispered something his father had told him years ago. Make them choke on their prejudice. Then he pushed the throttle forward and dove into the fight of his life. January 27th, 1944, 5:11 hours, 8,000 feet above Anzio. The fight had been raging for 24 minutes. Ezekiel Rutledge's ammo counter read 480 rounds remaining. He'd already burned through 1,320 rounds, 2 kills confirmed, 1 damaged. This was his third and fourth victory since Sicily 6 months ago. His fuel gauge, 89 gallons, 37 minutes left at combat power. Below, the Anzio beachhead was chaos. 40,000 Allied soldiers packed into 6 miles of Italian coastline, surrounded on 3 sides. Artillery shells exploding, landing craft burning, tanks trying to push inland against withering German fire. And above it all, German aircraft. The Luftwaffe had thrown everything at this beachhead. Focke-Wulf 190Es, Messerschmitt Bf 109Es, Junkers Ju-87, Stukas dive-bombing the vulnerable troops below. The 99th had arrived to find 35 enemy aircraft swarming the beach like hornets. 15 P-40S against 35. For the first 20 minutes, it had been pure survival. Now, the tide was turning. Zeke saw a Bf-109 lining up on Captain Blackwood's 6 o'clock. The German pilot was good, staying just outside Blackwood's field of vision, patient, waiting for the perfect shot. Zeke didn't give him the chance. He rolled inverted, pulled hard, 6 Gs crushing him into his seat. The P-40 groaned, metal creaking, wings flexing. The 109 pilot saw him coming too late. Zeke fired from 250 yards, 2-second burst, 96 rounds. The Messerschmitt's tail section disintegrated. The aircraft entered a flat spin, unrecoverable. The pilot bailed at 6,000 feet. Third kill of the day. Mongoose leader, you're clear. Thanks, Zeke. Break right, 2 bandits on your 8. The dogfight continued. Vertical scissors, rolling scissors, high G turns that grayed vision and made blood vessels burst in eyes. Thaddeus Brennan fought like a mathematician. Every move calculated. No wasted energy. No unnecessary risks. He found 2 FW-190s working together, trying to trap Roscoe Whitfield in a pincer. Classic German tactic, 1 baits, 1 kills. Thaddeus disrupted it. He positioned himself above and behind the trailing 190, the one waiting to spring the trap. When that pilot committed to his attack, Thaddeus dove. 400 yards, 300, 200, single burst, 87 rounds. The Focke-Wulf's engine exploded. Glycol coolant sprayed white mist. The aircraft nosed over, smoking, the pilot fighting controls that no longer responded. He bailed at 4,000 feet. The lead FW-190, seeing his wingman go down, abandoned the attack on Roscoe and dove away, disengaging. Thaddeus let him go. Their mission wasn't to chase kills, it was to protect the men on the beach. Roscoe Whitfield faced his own crisis. His P-40 had taken hits. He didn't know when, didn't know from what. But oil pressure was dropping, 65 pounds per square inch at takeoff, now reading 42, falling slowly but steadily. And he had 3 German fighters to deal with. He couldn't outrun them, couldn't outclimb them. His engine was dying. So he did the one thing the Germans didn't expect. He turned toward them. Head-on attack. Combined closure rate, 800 miles per hour. 4 seconds from impact. The lead German pilot flinched first, broke left, unwilling to play chicken with a madman. The other 2 followed. As they passed, Roscoe snap-rolled, pulled vertical, and fired at the trailing aircraft. Deflection shot, nearly impossible. He led the target by a full 3 aircraft lengths. 1 second burst, 48 rounds, 7 connected. It was enough. A single .50 caliber round punched through the 109's canopy and hit something critical. Hydraulics, control cables, the pilot himself. The aircraft rolled inverted and dove straight into the sea. Roscoe's oil pressure, 28 pounds per square inch. He keyed his radio. Mongoose leader, Mongoose 8. Oil pressure critical. I need to head home. Copy 8.
Good shooting. Get back safe. Roscoe turned south, nursing his dying engine, hoping he had enough oil left to make the coast. By 05:45 hours, the sky over Anzio was clear. The Luftwaffe had lost 12 aircraft in 41 minutes, 4 Ju-87 Stukas, 5 Fokker-Wulf 190s, 3 Messerschmitt Bf-109s. The 99th Pursuit Squadron had lost 0, not one pilot killed, not one aircraft destroyed. But the day wasn't over. Intelligence reports indicated the Germans were planning a second wave, bigger, more concentrated. At 9:30 hours, it came. 31 German aircraft, the largest single formation the 99th had faced. 16 P-40 scrambles to meet them. The Second Battle of Anzio lasted 33 minutes. When it ended, 8 more German aircraft had been destroyed. 2-day total for the 99th, 20 kills, 0 losses. The performance was so spectacular, so completely at odds with Meyer's report, that it couldn't be ignored. February 3rd, 1944, Washington, D.C. The War Department launched a statistical study comparing the 99th's combat record with other P-40 squadrons in the Mediterranean theater. The analysis was conducted by the Office of the Inspector General. 3 statisticians, 47 pages of data, missions flown. 99th flew 87 missions. Comparable white squadrons flew 89 average. Enemy aircraft encountered. 99th encountered 156 enemy aircraft. Comparable squadrons, 161 average. Confirmed kills. 99th had 32 kills. Comparable squadrons, 31 average. Aircraft lost in combat. 99th lost 4 aircraft. Comparable squadrons, 6 average. Pilots killed. 99th lost 2 pilots. Comparable squadrons, 4 average. Conclusion. When accounting for equipment age, mission types, and operational conditions, the 99th Pursuit Squadron demonstrates performance equal to or exceeding comparable units. Previous assessments suggesting inferior performance are not supported by empirical data. General Arnold read the report twice, picked up Meyer's shutdown order from his desk, tore it in half, wrote on his notepad, expand Tuskegee program, authorize formation of 332nd Fighter Group. The experiment had survived. February 10th, 1944, Ramitelli Airfield, Italy. Captain Nathaniel Blackwood stood in Colonel Parsons's office. Parsons held a small wooden box. The War Department reviewed Meyer's report and the Anzio results. Their conclusion: Meyer was wrong. You were right. He opened the box. Inside, silver oak leaves, Major's rank insignia. Effective immediately, you're promoted to Major, and the 99th is being expanded. 3 more squadrons are graduating Tuskegee next month, the 100th, 301st, and 302nd. You'll command all of them, the 332nd Fighter Group. Blackwood stared at the oak leaves, 24 years old, about to command over 100 pilots. Sir, I don't know if I'm ready. Neither did I when they made me a colonel. You'll figure it out. Parsons stood, extended his hand. Congratulations, Major. You've earned this. Blackwood shook his hand. Thank you, sir, for everything, for believing in us when... Parsons cut him off. I didn't believe in you at first, son. I'm not going to lie about that. But you made me believe. That's the difference. Now go make them all believe. May 1944, Ramitelli Airfield. Major Nathaniel Blackwood, promoted again to Lieutenant Colonel in April, stood on the flight line and watched the future arrive. 47 P-51D Mustangs, brand new, fresh from the factory. Silver aluminum skin gleaming in the Italian sun. Not worn-out P-40s, not hand-me-downs, not obsolete aircraft with failing engines. The best fighter in the world. Blackwood walked to his assigned aircraft, serial number 44-14733,
A crew chief was stenciling his name below the canopy. The specifications were posted on a clipboard, hanging from the cockpit. North American P-51D Mustang *, engine, Packard V1650-7, Rolls-Royce Merlin, 1,490 horsepower at 3,000 RPM. Maximum speed, 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. Combat range, 1,650 miles with external tanks. Service ceiling, 41,900 feet. Armament, 6 times .50 caliber M2 Browning, 1,880 rounds total, 400 rounds inboard, 270 rounds middle/outboard positions. Weight, 12,100 pounds fully loaded. Rate of climb, 3,200 feet per minute. Blackwood had logged 340 hours in P-40S. The Mustang made the P-40 feel like a child's toy. Zeke walked up beside him, staring at the aircraft. "This is what we should have had from the beginning." "Maybe," Blackwood said, "but we proved ourselves without it. Now we show them what we can really do." The next day, they received their new mission assignment, long-range bomber escort. The 15th Air Force was flying deep penetration raids into the heart of Nazi Germany. Berlin, Munich, Vienna, Ploiești, targets 700, 800, 900 miles from base. The bombers, B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, were suffering catastrophic losses. German fighters would wait until the short-range P-47 escorts reached their fuel limits and turned back, then swarm the defenseless bombers. The statistics were grim. Between January and April 1944, the 15th Air Force had lost 627 heavy bombers, 6,270 men killed or captured. The P-51 Mustang changed the equation. With drop tanks, it could escort bombers all the way to targets deep in Germany and back. The 332nd Fighter Group's job: stick with the bombers, protect them, bring them home. Blackwood gathered his pilots, 107 men now, the original 99th plus the 3 new squadrons. "Gentlemen, our doctrine is simple. We are not ace hunters. We are not glory chasers. Our mission is to bring those bombers home. Every bomber that lands safely is 10 men who get to see their families again. That's what we're fighting for. Not kill counts, not medals, lives." He paused, looking at each face. Other fighter groups let their pilots roam, chase enemies, rack up individual kills. We won't. If a German fighter runs, we let him run. If he's not threatening our bombers, he's not our problem. We maintain formation discipline. We stick with our assigned aircraft no matter what. Is that understood? It was understood, but not everyone liked it. One pilot, a recent arrival from the 301st, named Lieutenant Morrison, raised his hand. "Sir, with respect, other groups let their pilots pursue. That's how you become an ace. That's how you get recognition." Blackwood looked at him steadily. "Lieutenant Morrison, I'm going to tell you something. We don't need ace counts to prove ourselves. We need bomber crews who trust us more than any other fighter group in this theater. We need a reputation so solid that they request us by name. That's worth more than 100 individual kills. Do you understand?" Morrison hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir." 2 weeks later, Morrison would save a crippled B-17 by staying with it for 200 miles, fighting off 4 German fighters solo, getting 0 kills but bringing 10 men home alive. He never questioned the doctrine again. June 1944. The 15th Air Force issued an order. All fighter groups would paint distinctive markings on their aircraft for identification. The 4th Fighter Group got yellow noses. The 52nd got red and white checkerboard tails. The 325th got yellow and black. The 332nd Fighter Group was assigned red. Blackwood gathered his crew chiefs. "The order says distinctive markings. I want the entire tail section painted red. Rudder, elevators, vertical stabilizer, everything. And the spinners too. I want our bombers to see us from 5 miles away and know exactly who we are." "The entire tail, sir? That's That's a lot of paint. Then get more paint. I want every aircraft done by the end of the week. The crew chiefs worked around the clock. By June 7th, 47 P-51 Mustangs sat on the flight line with tails painted brilliant crimson. In the morning sun, they looked like they'd been dipped in blood. The first mission with the red tails was June 9th, 1944. Target, Munich.
24 B-17s, 48 red-tailed Mustangs. At 14:22 hours over Austria, a B-17 named Lucky Lady took a direct flak hit. Number 3 engine exploded. The aircraft fell out of formation, losing altitude, airspeed dropping to 140 miles per hour. Standard procedure, the formation continued. You didn't slow down for a cripple. That endangered everyone. But Blackwood saw what was about to happen. Mongoose 3 and 4, maintain formation. Mongoose 7 and 8, you're with me. We're staying with Lucky Lady. Zeke's voice. Sir, that's against... I know what it's against. We're staying. 3 P-51s peeled off, formed up on the crippled bomber. Lucky Lady's pilot, a 22-year-old from Nebraska named Robert Fletcher, couldn't believe what he was seeing. Who are you guys? Blackwood. 332nd Fighter Group. We're your escort home. You're staying with us? All the way. Distance to friendly territory, 187 miles. Lucky Lady's speed, 140 miles per hour. Time, 1 hour, 20 minutes. At 14:45, Messerschmitt Bf-109s appeared. They'd been shadowing the main formation, waiting for exactly this scenario. The dogfight lasted 11 minutes. Zeke destroyed 2, Blackwood got 1. Roscoe damaged 1 badly enough that it disengaged. The 5th ran. Lucky Lady flew on, 3 red-tailed Mustangs weaving protective circles around it. At 16:02, they crossed into Allied airspace. At 16:35, Lucky Lady touched down at Ramitelli, all 10 crew members alive. When Fletcher climbed out, he walked straight to Blackwood, stuck out his hand. It was the first time in his life he'd ever offered to shake a black man's hand as an equal. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. Blackwood shook it. Yes, we did. Word spread like wildfire. Within 2 weeks, every bomber crew in the 15th Air Force knew about the Red Tails, the fighters that didn't abandon you, the escorts that stayed, no matter what. In briefing rooms across southern Italy, the question became routine. Who's our escort today? If the answer was the 332nd, relief washed through the room. If it was anyone else, men wrote letters home, just in case. The statistics started accumulating. June through September 1944, the 332nd flew 143 bomber escort missions. Other P-51 groups averaged losing 3.2 bombers per 100 missions to enemy fighters. The 332nd lost 1.7 bombers per 100 missions. By October, bomber groups were requesting the 332nd by name. Operations officers would trade favors, call in markers, anything to get the Red Tails assigned to their missions. The men who had been called an experiment were now the most requested fighter group in the entire theater. But their reputation came at a cost. They flew more missions than anyone else, longer missions, harder targets, Berlin, Vienna, Munich, Ploest, and every mission was watched, scrutinized, judged. One mistake, one bomber lost because a red-tail pilot chased glory instead of staying in position, and the entire experiment would be questioned again. The pressure never stopped. Lieutenant Colonel Blackwood felt it every day. He'd lost 11 pilots since arriving in Italy, 6 killed, 5 captured. Every loss was a name crossed off his roster in black ink. Every loss was a letter he had to write to a mother, a wife, a father. One night in October, Zeke found him in his quarters, staring at the squadron roster. "You can't carry them all, Colonel." Blackwood didn't look up. "I'm their commander. If I don't carry them, who will?" "We all do. That's what makes us a squadron." Blackwood finally looked at him. "You know what keeps me awake at night, Zeke? It's not the missions. It's not the Germans. It's the thought that we could do everything right, fly perfectly, fight brilliantly, bring every bomber home, and it still won't be enough.
that they'll still find a reason to say, "We don't belong." Zeke sat down. "Then we make it impossible for them to deny us. We keep flying, keep fighting, keep being undeniable." Blackwood managed a small smile. "That sounds like something my father would say." "Then your father's a smart man." August 12, 1944. 14:37 hours, 8,200 feet above southern France. Lieutenant Elijah Donovan's P-51D took a direct hit from German 88mm flak. The shell detonated 40 feet below his aircraft. Shrapnel punched through the belly, shredding hydraulic lines, severing fuel connections, tearing into the engine. Oil pressure, 70 pounds per square inch to 0 in 4 seconds. Coolant temperature, 110 degrees to 130 in 6 seconds. The Packard Merlin seized at 8,100 feet. Complete silence except for wind. "Mongoose leader, Mongoose 7, I'm hit. Engine's gone. Bailing out." Blackwood's voice. "Copy 7. Good luck." Elijah rolled inverted, jettisoned the canopy, released his harness, fell. The slipstream hit like a wall. He tumbled, pulled the ripcord at 6,000 feet. The parachute deployed. The world stopped spinning. Below, French countryside, a village, and German troops running toward his landing zone. He hit the ground hard, ankle twisted. Pain shot up his leg. 3 Wehrmacht soldiers reached him in 90 seconds, rifles pointed. One sergeant looked at him with genuine curiosity. "Schwarzer Amerikaner? Ein Flieger?" "Black American? A pilot?" Elijah raised his hands. They took him to a farmhouse, removed his sidearm, watch, dog tags, sat him in a chair. 20 minutes later, a Luftwaffe intelligence officer arrived. Captain, mid-30s, perfect English. He opened a leather folder. "Lieutenant Elijah Donovan, born Detroit, Michigan, May 3, 1918. Father, Raymond Donovan, mathematics teacher at Cass Technical High School. Mother, Catherine Donovan, registered nurse, Detroit General Hospital. Married to Sarah Donovan, née Williams. One son, Michael, age 4 years, 8 months." He looked up. "You graduated Tuskegee Army Airfield, December 1942, 7th in your class. Currently assigned 332nd Fighter Group, 99th Fighter Squadron. You fly P-51D Mustang, tail number 44-14891. The Red Tails. Schwarzer Vogelmännchen." Elijah stared, processing. "How do you—" "We know everything about your unit, Lieutenant. Your base at Ramitelli, your commander, Lieutenant Colonel Blackwood, your squadron mates, your tactics." He tapped the folder. "We've been tracking you since Anzio. Your pilots are disciplined, effective, more dangerous than most American fighter groups we encounter." He closed the folder. "You've earned our respect, which is more, I suspect, than your own country gives you." The observation landed like a punch. Elijah said nothing. The officer shrugged. "You'll be transferred to Stalag Luft 3 tomorrow, a camp for captured airmen. The conditions are acceptable. You'll be with other Americans. Some may try to escape. None succeed, but it occupies the time." He stood. "For what it's worth, Lieutenant, I hope you survive this war. Men who fight, despite how they're treated, deserve better." Then he left. August 15th, 1944. Stalag Luft 3, Sargam, Germany. The camp held 10,000 Allied POWs, mostly aircrew, British, American, Canadian, Free French. Elijah expected segregation. Instead, a white American captain walked up to him, hand extended. "You're one of the Red Tails?" Not a question. "Yes." "Captain Robert Williams, B-17 pilot, 97th Bomb Group." He grinned. "Your guys saved us over Munich. June 9th. My number 3 engine was shot out. 3 of your Mustangs stayed with us the whole way home." Elijah remembered. "That was Blackwood, Zeke, and Roscoe. Lucky lady. That was my squadron. Then I owe you my life. Come on, you're bunking with us." No segregation, no separate barracks. For 3 weeks, Elijah experienced something he'd never known in America: equality. Bomber crews shared their Red Cross packages, invited him to poker games, included him in escape planning sessions. A tail gunner from Ohio gave him an extra blanket when the nights got cold.
You kept me alive over Berlin. It's the least I can do.
Elijah wrote in a hidden diary using pencil stubs and scraps of paper. August 28, 1944. I sit in a Nazi prison camp, surrounded by men who 6 months ago wouldn't sit next to me on a bus. Here, they treat me as a brother, as an equal. We are all prisoners. We are all airmen. The color of my skin doesn't matter. I fought the Luftwaffe over France, over Germany, over Austria. They tried to kill me. I tried to kill them. That was war. Honest, simple. But this, being treated better by fellow Americans in a German POW camp than I would be in my own country, this is proof the prejudice isn't natural, isn't inevitable. It's a choice. If these men can choose equality here, in the worst circumstances, then there's no excuse for how things are back home. We're fighting 2 wars. I've won battles in one. But the other war, against ignorance and hatred, that war continues. And I don't know if we're winning.
That diary was found after his death in 2003, donated to the Smithsonian in 2005. While Elijah sat in Stalag Luft 3, the 332nd continued to fly. September 1944, 38 missions, 212 bomber escorts, 6 enemy fighters destroyed, 0 bombers lost. October 1944, 41 missions, oil refineries at Ploiești, ball-bearing plants at Schweinfurt, marshalling yards at Vienna. The tally grew: 67 enemy aircraft destroyed, 94, 108, and the statistic that mattered most, over 200 bomber escort missions flown. Total bombers lost to enemy fighters under 332nd protection, 25. Average for comparable missions by other groups, 43. A 42% reduction in losses. The Red Tail Angels weren't just good, they were saving lives on a scale that couldn't be denied. March 1945. The war was entering its final phase. Germany collapsing, the Red Army pushing from the east, Western allies from the west and south. But Germany had one last weapon, the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. Messerschmitt Me-262, Schwalbe, Swallow, engines, 2 times Junkers Jumo 004 B turbojets, 1,980 pounds thrust each. Maximum speed, 540 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour faster than P-51. Armament, 4 times 30mm Mk-108 cannons. One hit destroys a bomber. Service ceiling, 37,500 feet. Weaknesses: poor acceleration, wide turn radius, engines required delicate throttle control. Allied pilots who encountered it described fighting the future. Impossible to catch in a straight line, devastating firepower. By March 1945, Germany had perhaps 50 operational Me-262s. 25 were assigned to Jagdverband 44, an elite unit commanded by Lieutenant General Adolf Galland, one of Germany's top aces. Their mission: defend Berlin. On March 22nd, Allied intelligence confirmed JV-44 would be defending the Daimler-Benz tank factory. The factory produced 40% of Germany's remaining tank engines. It had to be destroyed. Mission assigned: 5th Bomb Wing, 24 B-17s. Escort, 332nd Fighter Group, 43 P-51s. Distance, 1,600 miles round trip. The longest escort mission ever attempted. Estimated enemy resistance: heavy, including Me-262 jets. March 23, 1945. Evening briefing. Lieutenant Colonel Blackwood stood before his pilots. "Gentlemen, tomorrow we fly to Berlin. Longest mission we've ever attempted. Most heavily defended target we've ever faced. And we'll be facing a weapon most fighter pilots haven't figured out how to beat, the Me-262 jet." He paused. "But we have advantages." Thaddeus Brennan stood, walked to the chalkboard. "The Me-262 is fast, very fast, but it can't turn with us." He drew diagrams.
Turn radius at 400 miles per hour, approximately 3,000 feet. The P-51 at 300 miles per hour, 1,800 feet. If a jet commits to an attack run, he's locked into a relatively predictable path. He drew vectors, angles. When you see a jet approaching, don't chase head-on. You'll never catch it. Instead, turn perpendicular, 90 degrees away. Force him to overshoot. Then reverse onto his tail during his wide turn. You'll have 3, maybe 4 seconds. That's your window. One pilot raised his hand.
What if there's more than one? Then we work together, same as always. Communicate, trust your wingman, stay disciplined.
Blackwood added, remember, our mission isn't to shoot down jets. Our mission is to bring those bombers home. If we can do that without firing a shot, that's perfect. But if we have to fight, we fight smart. The briefing ended at 2200. None of them slept well. March 24th, 1945, 6:15 hours. 43 P-51D Mustangs launched from Ramitelli in pre-dawn darkness. Each aircraft, 269 gallons internal fuel, plus 2 110-gallon drop tanks. Total, 489 gallons. Cruise power settings, 2,200 RPM, 35 inches manifold pressure. Fuel consumption, 65 gallons per hour. Flight time at cruise, 7.5 hours. The bombers, 24 B-17Gs, launched 30 minutes later. Rendezvous, 0800 hours over the Adriatic. The formations met on schedule. The Mustangs took positions, staggered altitudes from 24,000 to 28,000 feet, high enough for energy advantage,
Low enough to respond quickly. They flew north, over the Alps, over Austria, into Germany. At 10:47, they crossed into German airspace. At 11:30, they passed Munich. No resistance. The Luftwaffe was conserving strength. At 11:47, they were 47 nautical miles from Berlin. Blackwood checked his fuel. 177 gallons. He did the math. 743 miles home. At cruise power, 11.4 hours of distance covered. Fuel remaining at 65 gallons per hour, 2.7 hours. The numbers didn't work. They never had. But he'd known that before takeoff. All mongoose elements approaching target. Stay alert, stay disciplined. Those bombers are counting on us. At 11:52, the jets appeared. They came out of the sun, 25 Me-262s from Jagdverband 44. The largest jet formation ever assembled for a single engagement. Silver darts moving at impossible speed, engine whine like metal tearing. Bandits, 11 o'clock high, count 25 Me-262s. The German jets split into 3 groups. One diving at the bombers, one circling high to engage escorts, one positioning for a second pass. Thaddeus Brennan took the high group. 6 Me-262s at 29,000 feet, diving to build speed. Thaddeus didn't climb to meet them. He turned perpendicular, 90 degrees away from their attack vector. The lead jet pilot committed to his dive. 500 miles per hour, 520, 540, focused entirely on the bombers below. Thaddeus waited, watched them scream past at 1,200 yards. Then he turned, hard, 7 Gs. The jets had overshot, were now below him, pulling out of dives, beginning wide turns. Thaddeus picked the leader, rolled inverted, pulled. The P-51 dove at 15 degrees, 380 miles per hour, 410, 430. The Me-262 was turning right, trying to regain altitude. Turn radius, 3,000 feet. Speed, 320 miles per hour, slow for a jet. Thaddeus cut inside the turn, 800 yards, 600, 400. The German pilot saw him, tried to accelerate. The Jumo engines spooled slowly, fatal weakness. Thaddeus fired. 3 bursts, 2 seconds each, 87 rounds, 94 rounds, 103 rounds. Total,
284 rounds of .50 caliber API, armor-piercing incendiary. The rounds walked up the Me-262's fuselage, shattered canopy, punctured left engine, fuel ignited, fireball at 22,000 feet. The pilot bailed. First Me-262 kill of the day.
Ezekiel Rutledge faced a different problem. One Me-262 making a direct run on the lead B-17, head-on. Closure rate 900 miles per hour combined. The jet would have 2 seconds to fire before pulling up. But 2 seconds with 30mm cannons was enough to shred a bomber. Zeke couldn't intercept, too fast. Couldn't outturn it, it wasn't turning. So he calculated, predicted the jet's flight path, positioned his P-51 directly in the line of fire, between the jet and the bomber. The German pilot saw him, hesitated a fraction of a second. That fraction was enough. The jet pulled up early, trying to avoid collision, lost his firing solution. As the Me-262 climbed past, 200 feet away, Zeke snap-rolled vertical and fired straight up. Deflection shot, 850 yards, impossible range. He led the target by 0.72 miles, exactly as Thaddeus had calculated. 67 rounds fired, 43 missed, 24 connected. 1.50 caliber round punctured the right engine intake, destroyed compressor blades. The engine disintegrated. The jet snap-rolled left, one engine dead, one running. Uncontrollable, straight down, no bailout. Second, Me-262, kill. Roscoe Whitfield saw the third jet lining up on a B-17 called Memphis Belle II. The bomber was damaged, number 2 engine feathered, flying 40 miles per hour slower than formation, vulnerable. The Me-262 was 600 yards out, closing, cannons ready. Roscoe didn't think. He dove, full throttle, 3,000 RPM, manifold pressure 61 inches, 6 below redline. Flew directly between jet and bomber, into the line of fire. The German fired 4 30mm cannons. One round clipped Roscoe's left wing, didn't explode, punched through, dinner plate-sized hole. But it forced the jet to break off. As the Me-262 pulled up and turned, Roscoe turned with it. Couldn't match the turn, too fast. But jets have to slow eventually. 420 miles per hour, 380, 340, 300. At 300, Roscoe was faster. He closed to 200 yards, fired everything. 5-second burst, 420 rounds. The Me-262's tail disintegrated. Elevators gone, rudder gone, flat spin, unrecoverable. Pilot ejected at 18,000 feet, third Me-262 kill. But Roscoe had a problem. Debris from the jet, metal fragments, had been sucked into his air intake. Oil pressure 55 psi, 30, 8, 0. Engine temperature 110, 130, 150. The Packard Merlin seized at 16,000 feet. Propeller stopped. Mongoose leader, Mongoose 8. Engine's dead. I'm gliding. Blackwood. Can you make friendly lines? Roscoe checked his altitude. 15,800 feet. P-51 glide ratio, 15:1. 15,800 feet equals 3 miles altitude. Glide distance, 45 miles. Allied lines, 68 miles south. Negative. I'm 23 miles short. Bail out, Roscoe. Negative, sir. I still have controls. I can dead stick it. Zeke's voice. I'm staying with him. Zeke, return to the bombers. That's an order. Sir, respectfully, nobody gets left behind. You taught us that. Blackwood wanted to argue. Couldn't. Fine. Get him down safe. Then get home. 15 hours. The bombers dropped ordnance on Daimler-Benz. Direct hits, secondary explosions,
Target destroyed. The remaining Me-262s, 22 of 25, disengaged. 3 kills in 23 minutes. The bombers turned south. Blackwood checked his fuel, 28 gallons. Distance to Ramitelli, 743 miles. At cruise power, 28 gallons equals 25 minutes. 25 minutes equals 110 miles. Deficit, 633 miles. Impossible. Every pilot did the same math, same conclusion. All mongoose elements reduced to 1,800 RPM, lean mixture maximum economy. At 1,800 RPM, fuel consumption 42 gallons per hour. Speed 185 miles per hour. 743 miles at 185 miles per hour. 4.02 hours needed. 28 gallons at 42 gallons per hour. 0.67 hours available. Still impossible. Then Thaddeus noticed something. "Mongoose leader, check your ground speed." Blackwood looked. Airspeed, 185 miles per hour. Ground speed, 231 miles per hour. Tailwind, 46 miles per hour. Weather had shifted. High pressure over Europe, winds from the north, pushing them home. Thaddeus calculated 743 miles at 231 ground speed, 3.22 hours. Fuel, 0.67 hours. We're still short 2.55 hours. Silence. Then a B-17 pilot spoke up. "We can slow down. Less drag for you to fight." The bombers reduced to 160 miles per hour. The Mustangs tucked tight, flying formation, minimizing drag. Every mile mattered. At 14:47, the first P-51 ran dry. Engine quit. Pilot glided to a captured German airfield in Austria. At 15:15, 2 more. Emergency landings, friendly territory. At 15:58, they crossed into Italy. At 16:47, with fuel gauges reading 0, 42 P-51 Mustangs landed at Ramitelli. Engines coughing, tanks dry, some on fumes for 20 minutes. But they made it, and behind them, 24 B-17s, every single one. Perfect. Roscoe dead-sticked into a field 30 miles inside Allied lines. Wheels up, belly landing, slid 400 yards through mud, climbed out without a scratch. Zeke refueled at a forward strip, returned 3 hours later. Final mission statistics. Distance, 1,600 miles. Enemy aircraft, 25 Me-262S, 14 piston fighters. Enemy destroyed, 3 Me-262S, 4 FW-190S, 2 Bf-109S*. Friendly bombers lost, 0 asterisk. Friendly fighters lost, 0. Impossible, but done. April 1945. The 332nd received the Distinguished Unit Citation. The citation. The 332nd Fighter Group displayed outstanding courage, aggressiveness, and combat technique in aerial combat as to reflect the highest credit upon themselves and the armed forces of the United States. No mention of race, no asterisks, just recognition of excellence. May 8, 1945. Germany surrendered. Final statistics: 332nd Fighter Group, 15,533 combat sorties, 1,578 combat missions, 112 enemy aircraft destroyed, air, 150 destroyed, ground, 1 destroyer sunk, machine gun fire, 96 distinguished flying crosses, 14 bronze stars, 744 air medals, and most important, 27 bombers lost out of 1,578 missions. Average for other groups, 46 per 1,578 missions. The Red Tails had saved approximately 1,900 American lives. May 15, 1945. Elijah Donovan was liberated from Stalag Luft III by Soviet forces. He weighed 142 pounds, had lost 43 pounds in 9 months. The Soviets transported him to American lines, from there to a processing center in France, then onto a troop ship to New York. The ship carried 3,000 servicemen. On day 2, Elijah was directed below decks, segregated quarters, white soldiers, upper decks, better conditions, black soldiers, lower decks, cramped, hot. Elijah stood at the line, uniform on, medals visible, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal with oak leaf clusters, Purple Heart. A white lieutenant stopped him. "You can't be up here." "I'm a commissioned officer, same rank as you." "Doesn't matter. You know the rules." Elijah went below, sat in cramped quarters, surrounded by other black servicemen. Thought about Stalag Luft 3, about white POWs who shared food, who treated him as equal. The enemy had respected him more than his own country. June 1945, New York City. Elijah stepped off the ship. Sarah and Michael, now 5, waited at the dock. Michael ran to him. Elijah scooped him up, tears streaming. "Daddy, are you a hero?" Elijah looked at his son, at Sarah, at the city he'd fought for. "I tried to be, son." That afternoon, Penn Station, Elijah needed a restroom, sign above the door, "Colored only." He stood there in uniform, medals gleaming, and used the segregated bathroom. Welcome home. The other pilots had similar experiences. Zeke returned to Detroit, applied for commercial pilot positions. Rejection. Company policy prohibits hiring Negro pilots. Thank you for your service. Roscoe went to Birmingham, walked into a diner in uniform, medals on chest. Owner. "We don't serve coloreds. I don't care what you did." Roscoe left without arguing. Thaddeus returned to teaching in Philadelphia. Students didn't know about Berlin, about ME-262S, about anything. "Shooting down jets doesn't teach algebra," he said later. "Teaching does." Lieutenant Colonel Nathaniel Blackwood testified before Congress in 1947, brought combat reports, statistics, performance evaluations, laid out the case methodically. The 332nd proved black pilots could perform at the highest levels. That segregation was based on prejudice, not performance. That the military could no longer justify discrimination. Some congressmen listened, some didn't. But evidence was undeniable. July 26, 1948. President Harry Truman signed Executive Order 9981. It is hereby declared to be the policy of the President that there shall be equality of treatment and opportunity for all persons in the armed services without regard to race, color, religion, or national origin. The United States Armed Forces were officially desegregated. The order specifically cited combat performance of segregated units during World War II. The 332nd was mentioned by name. 23 years after a report declared black men unfit for service, the government admitted it was wrong. The Tuskegee Airmen had won their second war. The years passed. Nathaniel Blackwood remained in the Air Force, commanded integrated squadrons in Korea, rose to lieutenant general, first black officer to reach 3 stars. Never wrote a memoir. I did what needed doing. Died 2002, age 82. Buried Arlington with full honors. Ezekiel Rutledge became a commercial pilot in 1956 after airlines integrated. Flew for Delta 25 years. 2007, Congressional Gold Medal Ceremony. Age 87. Tears streaming when his name was called. Asked what he felt. Relief that we're recognized. Sadness it took 60 years. Died 2012. Thaddeus Brennan taught mathematics 43 years. Students didn't learn about his war record until local news ran a story in 1998. Why didn't you tell us? My job was teaching, not talking about myself. Died 2016, age 97. Roscoe Whitfield never flew again. Postal worker in Chicago, 38 years. Kept a diary. Found after death in 2019. May 15th, 1945 entry. War over. We won 2 wars, but the third, against ignorance and hate, still being fought. Don't know if we'll win in my lifetime, but we made progress. We proved them wrong. That counts for something. Diary published 2015, became bestseller. Elijah Donovan became civil rights activist, spoke at March on Washington, 1963, never mentioning military service. Reporter asked why in 1998. Equality isn't something you earn by proving yourself. It's something you deserve by being human. Died 2003, age 85. Sarah accepted Congressional Gold Medal, 2007. Held it, looked at inscription. Elijah would say this is 60 years late, but he'd be proud anyway. November 2007, United States Capitol. 300 Tuskegee Airmen, all that remained of 996 pilots, gathered for Congressional Gold Medal. Blackwood gone, Elijah gone, but Zeke, Thaddeus, Roscoe present. Zeke spoke at 87. People ask if I'm angry it took this long. I tell them, no. Anger is weight, and I'm too old to carry it. What I feel is pride. Pride we did what they said was impossible. Pride we changed history. And hope. Hope young people understand what we proved. Excellence has no color. Courage needs no permission. When told you can't, the best response is to do it so well they can't deny it. Thaddeus spoke. We didn't fight for glory, we fought for men in those bombers, for the future, for the idea that one day a black pilot wouldn't have to be twice as good to be considered half as worthy. I don't know if we succeeded completely, but we moved the needle. We opened the door. That's enough. Roscoe last. I flew 78 combat missions, faced death more times than I can count. But hardest thing was coming home and being treated like I didn't matter, like my service didn't count. So this medal, it's not just for us. It's for every black serviceman who came before and after, who wore the uniform despite discrimination, who served a country that didn't always serve them back. We didn't do this alone. We stood on shoulders of those before. We lifted those who came after. That's legacy. 5-minute standing ovation. 300 old men stood at attention one last time. Warriors, pioneers, heroes. The Tuskegee Airmen. Today, their story is taught in schools, names remembered, aircraft in museums. The Smithsonian has a P-51D with red tails. Children press faces against glass, reading what these men did. At Tuskegee University, a memorial. Bronze statue of a pilot, looking skyward. Inscription. They were told they couldn't fly. They soared. They were told they couldn't fight. They won. They were told they didn't belong. They proved otherwise. The Tuskegee Airmen, 1941 to 1946. Excellence in the face of adversity. Courage despite discrimination. Victory through perseverance. Every year, the Air Force inducts new pilots. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, male, female. Integrated units, judged by performance, not appearance. They exist because of what the Tuskegee Airmen proved, that skin color has nothing to do with ability to fly, that prejudice is a lie that crumbles before excellence, that when set up to fail and you refuse, when you turn impossible into inevitable, you don't just change your future, you change history. The 332nd flew 1,578 combat missions, faced the Luftwaffe's best, protected thousands of lives, shot down 112 enemy aircraft, earned 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses, did it while fighting 2 wars, one against fascism in Europe, one against racism at home. They won both. Not easily, not quickly, not completely, but they won, and proved what Nathaniel Blackwood's father told him at 12. Excellence is the best protest. The Tuskegee Airmen didn't just fly, they soared, and the sky has never been the same since.